actually look like.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Farah.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And we'll move on to Melissa Fox. Kevin, you want to introduce Melissa?
Sure. Thanks for joining us, Melissa. And I can see your window here, so I'll spotlight you. Melissa Fox has been on the council since 2016 and is also a candidate for Assembly District 68, which includes North Irvine. She's been involved in the city for a long time, sitting on commissions as well as now on the council. So we'd love to hear about your ideas about what's going on with the future of Irvine in general, the future of the great park planning from your perspective, as well as the veteran cemetery, and also, if you have anything to say about the assembly race. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kev. Well, I don't even think I can spare more than just a second for the assembly campaign because there's so much going on in the city. And I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure I had COVID back in January because every time I'm coughing, I give these events, I can't make it through without coughing, even though I haven't been sick since then. So I want to thank Sergio for the great work that he's doing. The supervisorial seat that he's running for is a Democratic seat, and I'm so glad to see him doing such a great job. We have seen the problems that having the Republican Trump leading, taking Trump's lead, the Republicans on the Board of Supervisors have caused huge problems in our county. In particular, we've been hearing about restaurants that are opening and businesses that are opening and refusing to abide by state orders. And our own supervisor has said that he will not enforce any of the state, the executive order. So I know that's caused him trouble with the sheriff and with the district attorney, but I mean, he's the one putting out that mixed message. It's really caused a lot of problems. So I'm really looking forward to having Sergio be a voice of reason on the Board of Supervisors. Regarding Wild Rivers, thank you, Mike, for coming and giving us a presentation. I have to say, you talked about Bombay blasters in Schweitzer Falls. I still felt the water going up my nose. I was really excited to be able to, in 2016, the first 2 major votes that we took was to support Wild Rivers coming back and live music in Irvine for the amphitheater. And it's time to have Wild Rivers, open. It's been so difficult moving around the site, and I'm so glad you stuck with it. And we're looking forward to having, some more great summers in Irvine. So the city is still having its meetings in person. The mayor has deemed that in-person meetings are essential, and they have not been focusing on making virtual meetings work effectively. That has caused a lot of problems for just being able to participate, both as a council member, and it's absolutely a huge problem that it has really dampened public participation. For example, the comments come in and names are mentioned and they're scrolled through. I have no access to comments. I can't see what anyone's being said. And in multiple meetings, they made comments available after the meeting. So that is not public participation, completely insufficient. So I would ask that those, particularly on issues of importance to you, that you request better participation for the public in our virtual meetings. Because you don't get your 3 minutes, you're limited to 50 characters, and not all comments are read. Okay. Cemetery. So we read with dismay the May revise of the moving of the 24.8 million into the general fund. However, the May revise is only a suggestion, and I know that there was some requests made directly to the governor that those funds be repurposed. So we have worked to put together a group to lobby the governor and to request in particular our congressional representatives to go through Pelosi to get those funds and put them to use at the cemetery. In particular, with a 4-1 vote of the council and the mayor now willing to move forward with the cemetery, we have a complete consensus at council. And so the political objections are now gone. So you have a 100% supportive council to move forward. So in addition to the funds that were allocated in the past, I've also been working with multiple members of the legislature, both on the Senate and on the Assembly side, to find other pots of money to start moving forward with the cemetery construction. There's a substantial amount of money available for remediation, as well as parks. And so all of that should be, we should be, with 4 or 5 different pots of money identified, we should be able to at least get the first $30–40 million to move forward. And there's especially pushing forward at a time when jobs are very important right now, especially good paying, prevailing wage jobs that will hire veterans and local workers. And I know that the council is considering that now, requiring that jobs in our city go to vets and a local hire for prevailing wage jobs. Let's see, so cemetery, community choice energy. So absolutely, there was, I know Councilmember Cons touched on it just a bit. We're not surprised that, number one, staff completely dragged their feet and didn't even order the peer review test until March 30th, months after they had claimed that there was going to be no delay and a concurrent moving forward with CCE. It's obvious that that's not the case. And it was even more apparent when the director came forward and made base conclusions with no supporting evidence that derided the original study, saying that risks were underestimated and savings were overestimated, when in fact we know, we spent months trying to get the best contractor, the consultant that we could, and that we for sure made sure that report, the CCE report, was moderate. It certainly could have predicted more savings, but they wanted to take a very moderate road, knowing that things were fluid in the future. And so it's no surprise that there was absolutely no data released so that the original consultant could compare, or other experts could compare what the findings of the, quote, peer review were against the original study. So I think we need to be pushing on community choice energy, because once again, is anybody going to be surprised when, oh no, we run out of time and we aren't able to institute CCE in time for the deadline this year yet again? So I'm a little suspicious of the timing on that, more than a little. Okay, great questions that I saw earlier about what's going on with construction. This is a great time for construction. Architects are still working. I'm working with my clients that are architects and planners and land use people. They're all in their remote offices moving forward. And there's no reason why we should be holding off on the Western sector planning. Now, this is the cultural terrace. We have been working with AECOM on an overall master plan design that isn't changed that much by the relocation of Wild Rivers from the LIFOC. And we have moved forward with the Fire Museum, and we've moved forward with the training center. There's no reason why we can't move forward with the Natural History Museum, which is going to be the centerpiece of the cultural terrace and the cultural part of the park. We also absolutely should be moving forward with a garden, because we know that even in a time of social distance, and by the way, you don't build the entire garden all at once. A garden is something that is built over time because plants need to mature. And so we need to move now rather than later. And it really, any excuse is just not wanting to put the money toward this issue. Now, the designation of the ARDA frees up the commitment of 5 points to build a park amenity. That needs to go forward now. This takes a number of years of planning. So even if the most worrisome ideas about a vaccine are that it's going to take 18 months to 2 years, we still can move forward with the beginnings of the garden. We can get the museum underway, and 5 Points has put in a request to delay, and quoting COVID is not a good enough answer. So that's something that we need to pursue. We have the value of a golf course was $18 million. That was the cost value. So we need to move forward with taking that money, and also Full Circle Farm needs to move forward. And there's also been substantial delays in the retail centers as well. I've been told since 2015 that we were breaking ground any day on the retail center on Irvine Boulevard and on the hangar site just outside the portables in the middle of the Great Park. So we have to get moving on that. The residents in that area are very unhappy about the lack of shopping. Okay, 6, what else? I don't want to miss anything. Okay, testing. So the council approved both active virus, so antigen testing and antibody testing. But to be clear, the council approved testing for active virus regardless of insurance. So if you have insurance that will pay for it, we will bill the insurance. If you don't have insurance, the Irvine will pay for your test. Now, for the antibody test, we had there was a consensus with staff's recommendation, and my personal belief is that the antibody tests are not up to enough reliability, and they're not FDA approved. So Irvine didn't want to provide them. However, we agreed that we would facilitate residents who wanted to get an antibody test. I think there are those who are trying to change that, and I would be one of them. And here's my reasoning. It was never my intention to vote that the city of Irvine would provide antibody testing, because for a number of reasons. One, lack of reliability. Number two, we just aren't sure that you could even rely on having gotten the virus as sufficient protection from either spreading it to others or getting sick again. And so when it was reported in multiple sources, it was reported that Irvine was providing the tests. So we weren't going to pay for it. We said that the provider that we were using had available a certain antibody test, but you wouldn't be able to get it unless we pre-ordered a certain amount. So Irvine pre-ordered a small amount so that in the event that the residents wanted to order it and pay for it themselves, they would have that ability. But it's been clear that people have been understanding that Irvine is providing this test, and it was not recommended by staff that this was a test that would be sufficiently reliable to provide. So I would consider changing a vote and not providing it, so that people are not under the misperception that Irvine has vetted this test and is relying on its results. And that's going to start May 26th. So the company has assured us, the city council, that they will be able to have available the portal on May 26th. So we don't have that web address yet. We don't have the functionality yet, but they have promised to get it to us by May 26th. Testing. Okay. 2 Irvine City Council meetings in a row. I have been trying to push forward on the issue of licensed care facilities. 2 meetings ago, I put forward a memo that set forth the parameters that were being reviewed and passed by the Long Beach City Council based on having a lot of incidences of COVID or outbreaks within licensed care facilities. We know in the state of California, the majority of deaths have been in licensed care facilities. We learned just an hour ago in another call that there has been a substantial outbreak in a Brea licensed care facility with 29 employees alone testing positive. And we believe those numbers were not reported in Brea's testing numbers. So we can't be positive that we can't be positive that they weren't reported somewhere else, but they definitely were not reported in Brea. So this has been a big issue. And at the first meeting, when we went through the 9 categories, the staff was supposed to collect the information and get back to us. So what happened was even only one question was even capable of being answered by our staff. And the question was whether or not licensed care facilities were requiring only staff to go in other words, denying visitors from the facility. So the best practices are wearing a mask from in and outside of their room, not allowing people who have tested positive for COVID-19 to be actively working in a licensed care facility until they're cleared under Medicare and CDC guidelines, and limiting entry to licensed care facilities, separating communal dining, and requiring people who've tested positive to be separated from someone yelling. Anyway, separating people who've tested positive from those who are not. So staff came back and said that of the 22 facilities in the city of Irvine, 5 are allowing complete open visitation. And so they absolutely been unable to get any response to this, and not even allowing, not even barring people who are actively carrying the virus from entering into licensed care facilities as a caregiver. So you could test positive, and this is what happens. Caregivers go in between facilities. And so if they've gotten the virus, they then spread it in between facilities. And so not being able to get any support for something as simple as not transmitting, not allowing people who've tested positive for the virus to actively work within the licensed care facility. So I'm asking for support for that. I've had that memo put around for 2 weeks now. And it's the same as and we went through each item in the last council meeting, but in particular, I mean, at the very minimum, we should be asking these licensed care facilities to limit visitors. Okay, and then I'll love to take questions. I'm sure that there are a lot, but I will talk about, my next town hall is on wildfire and its danger. We're gonna have an expert from Sacramento, and Assembly member Laura Friedman, who has been bringing legislation on the difference, basically highlighting the difference between ignition, which is a Southern California problem, and fuel, which is a Northern California problem, and bringing money down here to do that kind of remediation. And I know we've seen, council members have seen at least 4 emails over the past 3 or 4 weeks that are concerned with the risk at Turtle Ridge View Trail because of kids starting fires there. And this is where we had a major fire back in late 90s, like early 2000s. So that's going to be on the 21st. And then I have a first major virtual fundraiser coming up on June 3rd, and that's sponsored by Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, California Women's List, and also going to have Monique Limon, who's the vice chair of the Women's Legislative Caucus in the Assembly, and Senator Connie Leyva, who's the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, and Letitia Clark is a sponsor, as is Becky Gomez. So that's going to be a big one, and that is going to be June 3rd, and I will see if I can hunt down the invite and pop it into the chat. So now the problem with talking is that, and looking at my notes, is I can't see any of the questions. So if there's any questions, maybe we could, want me to go through them?
I could try. I was
That would be
trying to
great.
keep track of them.
Thanks.
Yeah, there was a question on, I think a couple of people asked, both in the submissions with the registration and also on here, about the process of entering a transfer agreement with the state. Does that rely on a commitment of money from the state before you can even start talking about transfer agreement, or can the city start negotiating a transfer agreement like at the next council meeting?
Now, my understanding is that we can move to enter into an agreement with the state immediately, and we should. I mean, we voted on it. It's been through one measure and an initiative, and the subject of many, many council meetings. We were finally in alignment. We should be doing the transfer.
Great to know. I think a lot of people were asking that. There's a question on the location of the Botanical Garden and Natural History Museum. They're originally supposed to be next to each other, and I don't know if that's changed. I didn't know if the question was saying it has changed or it might change.
Well, look, anything is subject to change until it's in the ground, and even then with the Botanical Garden. My hope is that the Botanical Garden will be large enough to encompass multiple features. It fits very well with the Natural History Museum. It also fits very, very well with the Full Circle Farm. And we also, whether or not we do move forward with the golf course, and I think there really is not a lot of hope that we would have a golf course, it is intended, the point of the golf course was to have a major event facility. And so an event facility where you can have cooking demonstrations and weddings, and that too aligns with both the Full Circle Farm and the Botanical Garden. So being able to move all of those together and then tie in the wildlife corridor, if there's potential for that, also very, very important. The whole point is to give the continuity to the entire park plan.
Great.
And AECOM has done a great job of tying all of this together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see here a question from Doris Fraser regarding lifting the mandate of mask wearing, and I don't know if that is a city issue or is that mandated by the state?
Yeah, well, and Ms. Fraser has contacted me before and said that she was going to send me some materials about that, but everything that I've seen encourages and supports the use of masks as essential. And I'm not saying, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I rely on experts, and everything that I've seen says that masks are essential. So the type of mask and the situations where you're going to be masked, I personally am looking to guidance of others, and in particular the state and some of our surrounding cities. But I am always open to additional information. I know I live in a household with an immunocompromised person, and we use the surgical masks because of the severe risk to a household member. So again, we have not had any discussions about removing any of the strictures for operating in a retail environment. The only thing that has been supported was the use of certain facilities in conjunction with the requirements of the state. And every vote that I've had, I have always said that I will only support changes to our city rules if they are also in line with what the state is requiring. Now, as a city, we've gone further because we are an urban, dense city. It's not the same as some of the northern, very, very rural communities. So we are at a higher risk. And now, my concern based on a number of things, but in particular, the information that we have from the county, we know is incomplete. Number one, we have 29 cases that were not reported for Brea, 29 cases within a licensed care facility, and they weren't even the patients. If there are 29 employees that were tested through NUHW, there are going to be residents as well. And so number one. And number two, today's count seems to have roughly the same amount of hospitalizations as the day before. However, it only was 21 of the 25 hospitals. So there were 4 hospitals not even reporting. So that means that our hospitalization, unlike other areas of the county and of the state, we are not seeing fewer hospitalizations. We are not seeing a flattening of the curve. We are seeing a steady increase. And so we are still vulnerable. And until we see in place the ability, because we need contact tracing and we need testing, but those two things have to go together. We have to stop the virus from being spread so that contact tracing makes sense. You have the few enough cases where you can then get down to a granular level and see where the virus is and how it's going. So no, I haven't thought of releasing any strictures myself. We haven't discussed it as a council formally. And until I see any kind of authority that says that gives me the science to review that's contrary to what we've been getting so far, I'm going to stay with the plan.
Good, great, thank you. And then a comment on the fire prevention. I've been hiking around my neighborhood and I see everywhere goats, and I love it, you know. And I think that was actually Shay's baby back when, you know, but are there any plans to even expand that, or is it effective? Yeah.
Well, I just had a town hall with Mike O'Connell on Thursday, and we talk a little bit about the goats. Goats are great. They're really good in areas that have a lot of invasive species because they clip the vegetation down to the nub. So they are very, very good in fire-prone areas, and they're, you know, they also fertilize. So, you know, they do a lot of great stuff. They're not making noise. They're not potentially going to spark a wildfire. They're wonderful. They can't be used exclusively because they're indiscriminate eaters. So where we have drought tolerant and fire fire resistant areas, you wouldn't want to use the goats. But we still have plenty of areas that, and the Quail Hill, some areas in there, and back in Turtle Ridge are perfect for the goats. And we're working on that. But more importantly, in addition to the goats, we have a second hand crew, and a hand crew is just a trained trail breaker. So the Orange County Fire Authority, as part of the settlement with the city of Irvine, brought on a second hand crew because we only had one with Orange County Fire Authority for the entire county. We now have 2. So we have the ability to get into the brush, to break the trails, and to then remediate those areas. And one of the things that I plan on working with Laura Friedman on is to bringing back money to our area, because the city of Irvine has the largest WUI, wildland urban interface, than any other entity in the county, including the county itself, including, you know, we're backs up to San Bernardino. So very, very important so that we don't lose our home. We saw what happened in Canyon 2. The fire stopped right at Peters Canyon. Trees burnt right up to people's homes. And so we still have significant danger, particularly as climate change continues.
Right. Okay, thank you. I think we are out of time, but maybe one more question if I missed somebody. Kev, do you see any more questions?
I mean, I don't recall any that we missed.
Okay.
But let me just put, I'll copy all the COVID resources I have are on my Vote Melissa Fox website, and then I will put in the additional resources on another email address. If anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Melissa. And now we'll go on to board announcements. And I know that Laurel had a board announcement.
Before we go on, Yuta, I think there was a proposal, if we could poll, you know, this isn't an official vote or anything, but to poll our membership to ask if people are in favor of holding a new town hall, since there hasn't been one for about 3 years, on the future of the Great Park. What do you think, Yuta, as chair?
Yeah, we can do that, and we can do that in the chat if you're for it.
Well, actually, I've got a poll set up, so I can actually
even easier. Okay.
click. So I'm going to launch the poll now and see what people think about yes or no on having a community town hall.
Absolutely. Great idea, Kev.
There's 55 people on, so hopefully they can.
I don't think we have any no's.
And this is an official board. This isn't an official club position, just an informal view on if there should be a community town hall. Laurel says yes in the chat. If you see the window, I think it doesn't work on